Good evening. It's Thursday, January 16th. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Maya Trabulsi. It's a moment we haven't seen in a generation, and just the third time in U.S. history, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court sworn in to preside over an impeachment trial.
Do you solemnly swear that in all things appertaining to the trial of the impeachment of Donald John Trump, President of the United States, now pending, you will do impartial justice according to the Constitution and the laws, so help you God?
I do.
That's Chief Justice John Roberts, not often seen by the public due to a ban on cameras at the Supreme Court, but that's all about to change. Karen Kafa reports on this historic day in Washington and what's still to come.
House Resolution 755, impeaching Donald John Trump, President of the United States, for high crimes and misdemeanors.
The House articles of impeachment against President Trump read aloud on the Senate floor, the Senate formally accepting them.
The Senate will duly notify the House of Representatives when it is ready to proceed to trial.
Thursday's activity largely ceremonial. The swearing in of Chief Justice John Roberts as presiding officer and U.S. senators as jurors. The table being set for the real action to get underway on Tuesday. But the parameters of that trial still under debate.
The leader complained that the House was doing short-termism and rush. The leader is trying to do the exact same thing in the Senate.
Senate Democrats hoping to sway a handful of Republicans to join them to reach the 51 votes needed to call witnesses. It's a move Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell has resisted as he tries to steer toward a speedy acquittal, criticizing the House for not doing their homework.
They sped through a slapdash inquiry in 12 weeks when previous presidential impeachments came after months, if not years, of investigations and hearings.
Also Thursday, a federal government's watchdog agency, the Government Accountability Office, concluding the Trump administration broke the law in withholding aid to Ukraine appropriated by Congress. That aid at the core of this impeachment. In Washington, Karen Kafa, KPBS News.
President Trump says he wants a quick end to the impeachment trial. Today at the White House, he repeated his claim that his dealings with Ukraine were proper.
This is a hoax. It's a shame. I did the biggest deal ever done in the history of our country yesterday in terms of trade, and probably other things too, if you think about it, the deal with China. And that was the second story to a total hoax.
And President Trump says impeachment was passed by Democrats to help their election chances. Meanwhile, today's events brought anti-Trump demonstrators to the Capitol. Some were led away in handcuffs after refusing to clear the area. And KPBS will have gavel-to-gavel coverage of the impeachment trial on all of our platforms. PBS NewsHour coverage will be carried on KPBS 2. You can also follow everything on KPBS Radio and kpbs.org. Again, the Senate trial begins Tuesday. Before taking on impeachment today, the Senate took on another big item, and now a new North American trade agreement is heading to President Trump's desk. The U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement passed 89-10. The House passed it last month. The new trade deal will replace the 90s-era NAFTA agreement. Updates include new provisions for digital commerce and new protections for the auto industry. It also calls for $300 million for sewage and pollution cleanup along the San Diego border with Tijuana. San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer laid out his goals in his final State of the City address. Among the big issues and spending items, affordable housing and the homeless. More now from KPBS reporter Andrew Bowen.
Faulconer is not backing down from his law and order approach to combating homelessness. He spent part of his speech decrying state laws that lowered criminal penalties for drug use, saying they've contributed to California's homelessness crisis.
These laws are letting people slowly kill themselves right in front of our eyes. These are cries for help, and folks are not going to change without consequences for their actions.
Faulconer says he'll lead a statewide voter initiative related to homelessness, though he didn't give any details. He's also continuing his push to stimulate home building.
We are in this predicament because for far too long we have been caught up in a false debate: housing versus communities. We are conditioned to believe that communities that get more homes lose, and communities that stay the same win.
With thoughtful planning, we can anticipate future conditions to create more resilient communities.
After the mayor's speech, the city unveiled a new website and this video promoting his so-called Complete Communities initiative. He says it'll add housing density near transit and fast-track new neighborhood infrastructure projects. The mayor plans to bring it before the city council for a vote this spring. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
The city of Poway will get a bill from the state due to last month's boil water advisory. The water issue forced some businesses to close for a week. Now, a state board that deals with water issues is criticizing Poway for failing to protect the water supply and how it communicated with the public. As a result, Poway will be asked to reimburse the state for some related costs. The water issue was traced to a rope caught in the system that caused storm water to back up into treated water. $35 million. That's how much the city of San Diego is suing SDGE for, alleging the utility giant's failure in an underground project to supply drinking water. KPBS reporter Amita Sharma explains.
San Diego officials say SDGE is refusing to pay to relocate its gas and power lines. The city needs those lines moved for the water recycling effort called the Pure Water Project. The city also claims that SDGE refused to even begin moving the lines unless it paid the relocation's $35 million cost up front. To avoid a delay, the city paid that tab in 2018. But City Attorney Mara Elliott says SDGE is contractually required to pay those costs, and San Diego wants the $35 million back. She says it's unfortunate the city has to sue, quote, our longtime partner to honor the terms of its contract with the city. In a statement, SDGE said the company doesn't believe the relocation costs should be spread to customers in other cities who don't benefit from the project. Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
Last week, Border Patrol agents bulldozed the U.S. side of a garden that straddles the border between Tijuana and San Diego. Now, after community outcry, Border Patrol says it's prepared to let gardeners rebuild. KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Nadler has the story.
Takati cypress, agave shawi, and this is a mallow bush.
Daniel Wattman is a co-founder of the Friendship Garden, which he helped establish in 2007, when the border at Friendship Park was still just a chain-link fence. Last Wednesday, he was stunned to find that Border Patrol had bulldozed the U.S. side of the garden and its dozens of native plants. It also removed a concrete bench and sign that had been in the park for years. Border Patrol initially said that safety concerns had prompted its decision to remove the garden. We met up with Wattman on the Mexican side of the border. He doesn't believe the garden presents a danger.
I think that this garden contributes to security of the region. I think that there's a misnomer that security is like a synonym to enforcement. To me, enforcement may be a part of security, but so is cross-border friendship, so is promotion of native flora, so is family reunification, and this policy of division doesn't make things more secure, it makes things more dangerous.
On Sunday, dozens of people from both sides of the border rallied in Tijuana in support of the garden. They put up signs regretting the loss of what they believe is a crucial link between two nations during a time of intensifying border security. Now, Border Patrol is backing down from its demolition of the garden, issuing a statement on Twitter that apologizes for its unintentional destruction and that they have launched an investigation of the demolition. Wattman tells us members of the Friends of Friendship Park, which tends the garden, met with Border Patrol yesterday and were told that they would be able to begin replanting the garden on January 25th. The groups are still working out the details of how much access gardeners will have to the space, but Wattman says he made one thing clear to Border Patrol, that the garden must always be physically binational.
The purpose is for people to make friends through the fence, so we really need to have it connected to the Mexican side.
Wattman explained that the roots of the native plants are already so deep on the Mexican side, it would be impossible to safely move it. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, for the third time in U.S. history, an impeachment trial of a U.S. president begins. Coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Candidates for San Diego mayor will gather tonight for a forum at Hoover High School. They'll answer questions from students. The event is one of many political gatherings in the days ahead as the race to the March 3rd primary kicks into high gear. Maybe you've noticed an increase in the volume of mail you've been getting. Most of it could be the political mailers that are starting to make their way to voters. It's that time of year as campaigns push to get the backing needed for victory in the primary election. And KPBS will be right here to help you learn about the candidates and the issues. Tomorrow on Evening Edition, we kick off our special coverage by starting with the San Diego mayor's race. You will hear from each of the candidates and the issues that matter most. And in the days ahead, we'll break down the other races and measures on the ballot. And it's not just KPBS Evening Edition. Our election coverage is about to ramp up on all platforms. The KPBS Midday Edition and other shows are available to stream anytime. You can find those and a whole lot more at kpbs.org. When it comes to the race for president, one candidate is seeing a surge in support. Capitol Public Radio's Scott Rod tells us how a new poll puts Bernie Sanders at the top of the list.
The Vermont senator leads the pack with support from 27% of likely voters. Former Vice President Joe Biden and Senator Elizabeth Warren trail by just a few percentage points. Support for Sanders in California increased 10 points since the last PPIC poll in November. He has the strongest support from voters under 45. Pete Buttigieg polled at 6%, Amy Klobuchar 4%. On the issues, Californians are most likely to name homelessness as the biggest problem facing the state. In Sacramento, I'm Scott Rod.
And California has an earlier role in the primary process this year, but come November, swing states will be closely watched, and changes to voting rights could play a key role. Carrie Antelfinger explains.
Dwayne Allmond was convicted of homicide and armed robbery in the 1980s and stripped of his right to vote. But he lives in Wisconsin, where a felon's right to vote is restored when he's done with probation or parole, and he was finished last fall.
Now I'm 53, and the first time I'm gonna vote in my life.
A Wisconsin group called Ex-Incarcerated People Organizing, or EXPO, is trying to find felons like Allmond to make sure they know their rights and get them to turn out to the polls. Voting rights advocates say there are thousands of felons who are not aware they can vote or have not been motivated to do so.
I'm baffled by it. The number of individuals who I run into in the community while we're doing this campaign who are eligible to vote have been for years, but no one ever told them your voting rights have been reinstated.
The outreach to felons is part of a larger effort to boost Wisconsin's black turnout in 2020. Turnout dropped 19% between 2012 and 2016, and that difference, according to a study by the Center for American Progress, might have swung the state to Trump. And with felons being disproportionately black, their participation in the 2020 election could provide a small but important shift.
We have small margins of victories or small margins here in this state, and it could change some of that.
Right now, EXPO is primarily working to increase census numbers, which helps underserved communities to get the funding they need. They're also planning the next phase, canvassing neighborhoods, holding prison events, and standing outside community corrections offices.
But once you get off probation and parole, then your rights are back reinstated.
Quentin Blackburn got off probation last May, but didn't know until recently he could vote.
I felt like I didn't matter, in a sense. So now that I can vote now, it's good news. I'm happy.
Good News Expo hopes to duplicate as they try to register some 7,000 people to vote before the fall election. Carrie Antelfinger, Associated Press.
A staggering increase in the number of flu deaths locally. County health officials say 9 people died last week. That nearly doubled this season's total to 20. The ages of the patients ranged from 45 to 88 and all had underlying medical conditions with the exception of a 57-year-old San Diego woman who died. Nearly 2,100 flu cases were also confirmed last week. Officials are still urging people to get immunized. Quite a rescue to tell you about in Northern California. After 6 days lost in the snow, a woman in her 60s was found and is recovering tonight. Bridget Biorlo tells us about the search and has reaction from the family.
For 6 long days and 6 sleepless nights, Laura Powell feared the worst.
This morning we thought she was probably dead.
Her mom, 68-year-old Paula Beth James, had gone missing for nearly a week. Paula's picture could be seen on this flyer around town as authorities issued a silver alert.
Everybody was nervous. We were all kind of freaking out.
And as temperatures dropped, so did hope.
It just felt like we were doomed. So it was just like literally a miracle that those guys found her in just the nick of time.
But each day, the Butte County Sheriff's helicopter kept flying, looking for any sign of Paula.
One of our sergeants thought he spotted a vehicle that was matching the description of the silver Toyota 4Runner driven by Paula Beth James.
Buried underneath layers of snow in Butte Meadows was Paula's SUV, and inside, Paula herself.
She was awake and conscious, and she looked at them and she said, "I'm very cold. I hope you brought a blanket."
Cold, hungry, but alive.
I was shocked and really amazed. She's a pretty tough little lady, so that's pretty cool.
Her family says she stayed warm by periodically turning on the car for heat and staying warm with moving blankets and floor mats from inside the SUV. They say her rescue came just in time.
I really want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to the Sheriff's Department. They just went above and beyond, and we really appreciate them for that.
And tonight, Laura and her sisters are holding their mom a little tighter, treating each minute with her as a gift.
I just am so thankful for the relief that everyone is going to have tonight, knowing that she's safe and warm and fed, and we'll get to bring her home soon.
And that was Bridget Bjorlo reporting. And the woman rescued developed some frostbite and was severely dehydrated, but rescuers say she will recover. Keep an eye out for rain tonight in San Diego. A fast-moving storm will bring a chance of rain and snow in some areas. Lauren Rainson has our forecast.
Good evening, I'm meteorologist Lauren Rainson. Look at that trough that's swinging its way across the Golden State, and that's why we've been seeing periods of rainfall across San Diego County tonight. I still wouldn't completely rule out a few of those lingering showers. Those are going to drop from the 40s, some places near the coast in the lower 50s. Beginning tonight, lasting until 4 in the morning Friday, wind advisories are out for the higher elevations. This means at times winds are going to be gusting 45 to 55 miles per hour. High pressure will bounce back into our TGIF Friday. That means we're quieting down, a lot of sunshine, much drier, cooler air is spilling its way southward. Grab the shades, temperatures in the 60s, 60 in Ramona tomorrow, lower 60s closer to the coast, Oceanside, you're going to top out near 64. Into San Diego, near the metro, middle 60s. During this time period, our futurecast is fairly quiet. As we're working our way into early Saturday, there will be some areas of that coastal fog breaking through that marine layer, returning to more of that afternoon sunshine. Into the evening and overnight hours, you will remain under a mostly clear sky. Into Saturday we go. You have to go into Northern California, and I mean well north of the San Francisco Bay, before you run into any more rainfall. What that means for us back at home, you are crystal clear as we're entering that new weekend. Heads up though, if you have any travel plans across the eastern half of the country, we are continuing to track that next powerful storm system that will emerge out of the middle of the country and into the northeast through the weekend. Additional problem areas in the northwest with more rain and mountain snow. The pattern shaping up a lot milder and quieter along the western half of the country into early next week. The eastern two-thirds, that mercury is going to be dropping big time. At least we don't have to worry about that, right? A lot of sunshine along the coast with highs in the upper 60s, near 70 by Sunday. You're going to cruise next week with highs in the 60s. Further inland under ample sunshine, lower 60s Friday, lower 70s by Saturday. From inland to the mountains, where all that sun is continuing, upper 40s on Friday will be a bit cooler, then the lower 50s will prevail Saturday through Sunday. The desert region, a lot of sun as well, upper 60s through Saturday, lower to the middle 70s into early next week. Reporting for KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Lauren Rainson. Back to you.
Taking a stand against climate change, the San Diego City Council Environmental Review Board voted today to denounce global warming. The board declared a climate emergency, citing the recent rash of wildfires, changes in ocean temperatures, rising seas, and bluff erosion. The resolution, which is mostly symbolic, acknowledges the threat on the city and those who live here and declares a commitment to reduce carbon emissions. At least a dozen California cities and hundreds nationally have already declared climate emergencies. A change of plans for one of San Diego's biggest airline carriers. Southwest is grounding some of its Boeing jets. This is tied to the recent troubles with Boeing's 737 MAX planes following a pair of crashes last year. Hundreds of people died. Southwest Airlines will ground the planes until June. As a result, more than 300 daily flights will be canceled until the planes are back in service. For years, there have been efforts to build a high-speed rail line from Southern California to Las Vegas, and the latest plan just hit a roadblock. Mike Lueri tells us what's holding things up.
The Virgin Train USA high-speed rail line is a hit in Florida, but a similar plan for California was temporarily bumped off the tracks today.
I believe that they will get the sign-off, final report from the federal government, but it's just not here today. So we're hoping that it will be here by the next board meeting on February 12th.
This California board will have to answer more questions from the Federal Railroad Administration before approving $300 million in private activity tax-exempt bonds for a project that will connect Victorville in Southern California to Las Vegas, Nevada.
This project will not only fund new housing, it will spread thousands of new housing opportunities of all types.
Meanwhile, California's voter-approved high-speed rail system that is taxpayer-supported now hopes to make a connection with Virgin Trains USA in Southern California.
I see a time when we meet at the Palmdale station, and then we're figuring out jointly how it is we build the assets necessary to get from Palmdale south into Los Angeles and Anaheim.
The Virgin Trains USA tracks to Las Vegas could be operational in just 3 years' time.
Why can't high-speed rail operate that fast?
Well, a couple of things. One, they have all the funding they need to build their project.
The other issue is acquiring the land needed to build a high-speed rail.
All of their right-of-way is in public right-of-way. They're going to be getting right-of-way from the state of California.
And that was Mike Lueri reporting. One of Southern California's biggest draws is Disneyland, and that's especially the case with the new Star Wars land. And now a new ride is about to debut. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando got a preview.
Recruits, for your safety, stay seated with seatbelts securely fastened. Keep hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the transport and supervise your children.
When work tells you you have to go to Disneyland to check out the new Galaxy's Edge ride...
Okay, so you're rolling?
Well, you make the sacrifice and go. And then you take a fellow Star Wars geek like Gary Dexter in case you run into any Imperial entanglements.
Everyone off for interrogation.
When I was 9 years old, if I had told myself that a place like this would have existed, I just would never have believed myself. It's like stepping into a video game. Everything that you see around you is Star Wars. You can't see anything of the real world except the other guests.
That experience just got better with the addition of a new ride called Rise of the Resistance that takes place in the Star Wars universe after The Last Jedi.
BB-8, is everyone assembled?
It's the most technologically advanced attraction in the park, says show programmer Danny Beller.
There's a lot of conversations about what is the story we're trying to tell, what's the best way to tell it, what's the technology that tells that story. And that secret is to figure out how to tell that story. So sometimes there's ideas that we don't have a way to tell. Those are for future attractions. And then there's some where we know exactly the technology to tell. And that's kind of the cool thing. I hope when you ride it, you're not thinking about that technology. You're just immersed in the environment that we're offering.
And we were.
Mind-blowing in a word. It was faster than I imagined it would be. It was much, much bigger. And of course, I have no idea how they did it. And the truth is, I don't want to know either.
But there are challenges to pulling something this ambitious off.
One of the things that I say is show programming's job is to deliver the creative show and make it reliable and maintainable, right? We have other shows that play if you get delayed in that show. So that was, for me and my team, that was a ton of fun figuring that all out.
So how many of these like delay videos did you have to create?
There's a lot of different places in the attraction where you can be paused before you're going on to the next thing. And there is a ton. I think one of our animators said that we have animation for over an hour. You will not be in this attraction an hour, but there's a lot of different paths, there's a lot of different places you can go. So I think it's a really cool opportunity to see something slightly different every time.
Head down this way for interrogation.
Rise of the Resistance opens tomorrow and is the latest addition to Galaxy's Edge, which also features the Millennium Falcon, the Smuggler's Run ride, opportunities to interact with droids through the Disneyland app, and even chances for fans to meet their heroes.
You are the droid I've been looking for. I have searched all over the galaxy for you. I see you on television, I read about you in books, I see you elsewhere in the park, and only now do I finally get to meet you. But I have to tell you, it's an honor. Thank you, buddy.
My favorite part of the new ride was going under a pair of Imperial walkers that convey the scale of what the Resistance is fighting against. But whether it's escaping AT-ATs or navigating the lines at the new ride, may the Force be with you.
Great job, recruits. Thanks to your heroism, the location of the Resistance base is secure. Bravo!
From Batu, this is Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
Looks like so much fun. Rise of the Resistance opens tomorrow, and Disneyland currently has a deal for Southern California residents who can visit the park for $67 per day with the purchase of a 3-day, 1 park per day ticket. And Super Bowl 54 is just a couple of weeks away, and now we know who will sing the national anthem. Pop star Demi Lovato will do the honors. Miami is host for this year's Super Bowl, which will be played February 2nd. Jennifer Lopez and Shakira will do the halftime show. We'll find out who's playing in the big game this weekend during the NFC-AFC Championship games. And here's a recap of tonight's top story. The formal start to impeachment in the Senate. Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts was sworn in today. He'll preside over the Senate trial of President Trump. Today was largely ceremonial. The trial itself is set to begin on Tuesday. And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom, the link between homelessness and fires. On Morning Edition, what the numbers show about emergency calls in the city of San Diego. And on KPBS Roundtable, expanding San Diego's airport, a look at a major redesign planned for Terminal 1. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us tonight. Have a great evening.